Well, it's around 7 West Coast time. And David, I think you can introduce yourself. Many of us already know you, and uh, just looking forward to hearing and sitting with you tonight.
Thank you, Howie. Um, I know the announcement said that Howie was on tonight. We're not pulling a fast one on you. We just had a bit of a communication snafu. Howie is on the road and asked me a few weeks ago to cover for him tonight. So I hope you're not too disappointed, but maybe it'll be a nice surprise for you. It's 7 o'clock, so let's meditate. That's what we're here for, at least for the most part. And I don't like to lose too much of that valuable time of stillness. And sometimes I like to start just by offering a little gratitude to myself and the Sangha and all my friends here at Mission Dharma that we've given ourselves this opportunity to take a break in our day and to sit quietly. Can't think of a greater gift to ourselves and to the world than the gift of sitting quietly and simply experiencing whatever the moment has to offer. So please make yourselves comfortable. Seated, lying down, standing, whatever meditation posture feels most skillful to you, most useful. Whatever posture allows you to both relax and be alert. That's the careful balance of meditation practice. Relaxing and simply receiving our experience, and yet, if possible, not dozing off. We're spacing out, remaining alert to whatever's happening in our experience. And even sitting quietly with our eyes closed, a lot can be going on, as maybe you're already discovering. All the information pouring in through our six sense doors. Seeing, unless you've closed your eyes already, hearing my voice, hearing sounds in the background, perhaps even smelling and tasting, certainly touching, even sitting quietly with the eyes closed. The contact points of our body and our chair, our hands resting wherever they're resting, our feet perhaps on the floor, remind us that we're in this body and that the body is always present, always in the present moment. So it's a reliable meditation object, as is the breath, which of course is another aspect of being in the body. It happens only in the moment. So relax. Allow your shoulders to droop, face to soften, forehead, jaw. Allow your body to settle into its seat. And allow the mind to settle into its body. And as you settle, you may notice phenomena you might not have been aware of before. Sounds become more apparent when we close our eyes. Thoughts arise and pass away in the same way that sounds arise and pass away. So in this sense, the thinking mind is just another sense door, like the eyes, like the years. Phenomena comes and goes. If we don't get attached, it's not a problem. The invitation is to simply receive, relax and receive your experience. We don't need to make anything happen. You simply notice. And rest. Rest in the peace and ease that is the natural peace and ease of body and mind. Thoughts arising, feelings happening, are just passing phenomena, like clouds that are passing through the clear blue sky. And if it feels like you have a lot going on, that's just phenomena too. Maybe more like a storm. But even storms are impermanent. The clear blue sky is natural awareness. You always have it. You don't have to make it happen. Sensory phenomena are just clouds passing through. Not a problem. So we can just accept our experience, receive and accept it. Whatever's happening right now is what needs to happen. We don't have to resist it. If you get caught up in thoughts, at some point you'll notice that's happened because you're mindful. You can bring your attention back to the breath or to the body. Ground yourself once again in the present moment. And start your meditation again as often as you need to. So I'll just be quiet now. I invite you to continue meditating like this. And ring a bell at the end. If the mind has wandered, if you got caught up in a story, not a problem. Simply note that that's happened. Gently bring your attention back to the present moment, to the breath, the body. Ground yourself once again in the present moment. In the last moments of your meditation, allow the sound of the bell to simply be received mindfully. And as you open your eyes, allow the experience of seeing to be a mindful experience. Mindfulness doesn't end just because the bell rings. And if you choose to do so, you might consider trying to keep maybe 25% of your awareness on your body, on your embodied presence during the course of the talk. Not getting completely lost in your head or thinking about whatever I'm saying. It's just a mindfulness experiment. Thank you for your kind attention in your practice. Sangha is such a rich experience. Tonight I'm going to be talking about the different ways that we cultivate wisdom in Sangha when we meet together. We sit in silence for a while, as we just did, noting our inner experience through the 6 sense doors. Then after that, we listen to a Dharma talk by the teacher, which often points to that direct experience. And finally, we reflect on our experience or our understanding of it, sharing our thoughts with each other, if we're so moved to do so, in the discussion or question and answer period. All three are good ways of cultivating wisdom. And that's where we make space for all three in Sangha. And hopefully you do that in daily life as well. I sometimes like to ask people which of those 3 modalities is their favorite. Sitting quietly in meditation, listening to a talk, or reflecting and sharing with others. There's no right answer to that question, but you might just take a moment and see if a preference popped up when I asked it. Having asked that question many times, in live sanghas, I can say that a lot of people have a preference for the Dharma talk or the sharing part of Sangha. We Westerners have been conditioned to learn by doing, by study, by discussion, through intellectual effort. I think this is why we have an innate preference for understanding through intellectual activity. We highly value thinking. So not thinking or de-emphasizing our thoughts makes us a bit uncomfortable sometimes. The Buddha included thinking in his list of sense pleasures because we really enjoy thinking. We gravitate towards thoughts, even when we're trying not to. Did anyone notice that this evening in your meditation? I would go so far as to say thinking is a common addiction. One of the things that differentiates the Buddha's path is his emphasis on direct experience over thoughts as the path to wisdom. He recognized that thinking can often get in the way of simply abiding in the present moment, which is where we find peace and also where we experience true understanding and reality. Thich Nhat Hanh said, Understanding does not arise as a result of thinking. It is a result of the long process of conscious awareness. Sometimes understanding can be translated into thoughts, but thoughts are too limited to carry much understanding. That's what makes the practice of meditation so important. 3 of the steps on the Eightfold Path address meditation. So mindfulness and concentration are not optional in our tradition. But for many of us Westerners, as I said, trusting our inner wisdom by simply abiding in the present moment and noticing what arises is the most challenging of the 3 practices, the 3 wisdom practices. And that's because due to a lifetime of educational conditioning, we value teachings and discussion more than direct experience. It's not a cultural value for us. Some cannot imagine that simply sitting quietly and paying attention can have any value, especially when what we notice just seems like an annoying cacophony of nonsense. People find their direct experience challenging because, at least in the beginning, we cannot see how it can have any value. We don't trust simple awareness. The Tibetan Lama Kalu Rinpoche satirizes what he calls the 4 faults of awareness. In other words, what's wrong with awareness or mindfulness? Awareness or mindfulness, he says, is so close that you can't see it, so deep that you can't fathom it, so simple that you can't believe it, so good that you can't accept it. So it's the task of Dharma teachers to promote direct experience as something worth paying attention to. And it's up to us practitioners to train our minds to settle and notice that what we are experiencing rather than what we're thinking. And that noticing, by the way, includes noticing that we're thinking. We don't meditate to get rid of thinking. We meditate in order to change our relationship to thinking. Zen Master Dogen said, "You should cease from practice based on intellectual understanding, pursuing words and following after speech, and learn the backward step that turns your light inwardly to illuminate yourself." I love that quote because I love the metaphor of this practice being a backward step, not something we're leaning into. It's a backward step. As they say in the Zen tradition, the teacher is just the finger pointing at the moon. The moon representing natural wakefulness. The teachings are secondhand, while your direct experience is reality in the moment. The Burmese teacher U Tejaniya said, "We tend to get lost in concepts. We need to see the difference between the concepts we use to create a convincing mental picture of reality and reality itself." The Buddha's teachings can be understood intellectually, and that's a satisfying and worthwhile activity. But it's not the same as experiencing reality in the present moment. Blanche Hartman, who was a teacher at the San Francisco Zen Center, said, "We lose something very vital in our life when it's more important to us to be the one who knows than it is to be awake to what's happening." I think that part of our discomfort or distrust of natural awareness, which is called Rigpa in the Tibetan tradition, is that it arises as a result of not doing, and we Westerners tend to be doers. We even make meditation something we do with an expectation that there will be some reward. People often report that they came to meditation so that they can have a peaceful mind, which is not a bad thing. But a peaceful mind is really just a side effect of meditation. If we strive to access it, it will elude us. And if we don't immediately find it, we might give up. But there's another benefit of sitting with our direct experience that we sometimes discount because we don't trust it, and that is wisdom. The wisdom of seeing the true nature of things just as they are, including your most deeply conditioned habits of mind. This is another quote from U Tejaniya, who said, in meditation, we need to switch from doing to recognizing. In this way, you will slowly understand what is actually happening, and this will enable you to let go of the old paradigm. The much desired peace of mind comes only after we see the emptiness of thinking and striving and let go of all that, simply resting in awareness. The Tibetans use the metaphor of the sky to describe this. They have a lot of sky in Tibet. They say that our natural awareness is like the clear blue sky, but sometimes it's obscured by clouds. If we fixate on the clouds, we fail to see the clear blue sky. But if we sit quietly and notice the nature of clouds, we will see that they are constantly moving and changing, while the sky is always steady, always radiant. Natural awareness is a radiant mind, and you already have it. The clouds represent disturbances, our thoughts and stories, or wanting things to be other than they are, or grasping at the pleasant and avoiding the unpleasant. All the cacophony of a busy mind. But a busy mind is really not a problem as long as we just recognize it as a busy mind. It's our resistance to that that causes us to suffer. All we need to do is let go, to take a step back, which is the message of the third noble truth, the end of suffering. This is a very famous quote from Ajahn Chah that you've probably heard before, but it bears repeating. It's one of my favorites. Ajahn Chah said, if you let go a little, you'll have a little peace. If you let go a lot, you will have a lot of peace. If you let go completely, you will have complete peace. And your struggles with the world will come to an end. A lot of teachers use that quote because it's just one of the most perfect letting go quotes. But often they leave out the last line. They just talk about the letting go part. But I love that last line where he promises that your struggles with the world will come to an end. I mean, just think of what a promise that is. What a possibility. So this practice is more about letting go of what gets in the way of peace and happiness rather than getting something. I know Howie's said before that the Buddha didn't gain a thing in his life of practice. He didn't gain a thing. He just uncovered what was already there. This simple truth is what we Westerners have trouble trusting. We are doers, and we believe that everything worthwhile comes as a result of doing and striving. Letting go, or renunciation, doesn't come easily to us, at least until we learn to allow it. Renunciation in Buddhism is not about giving anything up. It's about letting go of what gets in the way of a peaceful mind. Recognizing that the clouds are just passing through. The opposite of doing is being. The opposite of striving is relaxing and receiving. Here's one more quote from U Tejaniya, who noted that we can read 1,000 words and try to reason our way towards balancing the mind and revealing understanding. But ultimately, we must do the work and create the conditions for this to happen. The meditating mind is beyond words, beyond reason, beyond self. By doing the work, I think he is referring to letting go and accepting things just as they are. And for most of us, this does indeed feel like a training program, like learning a new language or how to play a musical instrument. This is why we call it practice. Muninderji, who's one of Howie's teachers, said quite simply, if you want to understand your mind, sit down and observe it. We can only come to trust that this is true by sitting down and checking it out in our own experience. Don't take my word for it. One of the Buddha's most famous invitations is ehipassiko. That's the Pali language for see for yourself. For most of us, this is an incremental process that unfolds over time. It requires both diligence and patience. Neuroscientists say that in doing so, when we do this, we're carving new neural pathways, which is why it's difficult to chart our progress in practice. Wisdom isn't usually a sudden flash of insight, nor is it intellectual understanding. It's a gradual awakening. On the other hand, it's always at hand. If awareness is present, wisdom is present. Peace is always available to you, even in your very first meditation, no matter what's going on. And what wisdom do we receive by sitting down and observing the mind? Primarily, in the Buddhist tradition, it's insight into the three characteristics of existence. In Pali, dukkha, anicca, and anatta. We come to see, first of all, that everything changes. Did you notice that by examining in your meditation this evening? Everything changes in both body and mind. That which annoys us most in meditation practice is exactly what we need to recognize and accept. Anicca is the Pali word for impermanence. And because everything is constantly changing, everything is inherently unreliable. This is the noble truth of dukkha. Life, the mind, the world, other people are all unreliable. If everything is changing and therefore unreliable, it cannot be me or mine. It's just changing phenomena. That goes for this body and this perceived self. Anatta is the Pali word for not self. So these are insights, not beliefs. It's not dogma. They're the nature of reality. Maybe you notice them, one or all three, in your meditation this evening. They're always at work in our experience. Therefore, they're the three characteristics of existence that the Buddha pointed out. But don't take my word for it. Ehi pasiko. See for yourself. The other thing that we notice when we sit quietly is our reactivity. Or maybe more likely, we notice our reactivity first before we notice the three characteristics. And if we pay attention, we clearly see how we generate our own dissatisfaction. Joseph Goldstein says that we are 100% responsible for our own suffering. He's referring to our reactivity to the unreliability of our lives. But then he goes on to add, and this is important, he said, don't waste your suffering. And by this, he means that there's a lesson in seeing how we generate reactivity. And that lesson is the key to freeing ourselves from suffering. The famous parable of the two arrows teaches us that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. I noticed that in my own experience in this past week when I got cranky with somebody. Cranky and out of sorts and short-tempered. And I was aware right away of how painful that was for me. I don't know how much it was for the other person, but I apologized and made it up. However, I really felt the dukkha of not using right speech. So I didn't waste my suffering. I just deeply felt that suffering, had some remorse, and learned a lesson from it. So even dukkha is a wisdom generator. The good news is that walking this path of wisdom and compassion may be easier than you think. Another one of my favorite Buddhist quotes, which I've probably used here before, is from Adyashanti, who stipulates that it's not what you think, it's but much, much less. It's not what you think, but much, much less. We only have to sit quietly and receive our experience without trying to manage or control it in the present moment. Like any skill, it gets easier with practice. Every moment of mindfulness conditions further moments of mindfulness. The goal is not to become a good meditator, but to cultivate natural awareness in every moment of our lives, not just when we're on the cushion. Every moment of our lives. It becomes a habit of mind. Lama Tubten Yeshe says that just understanding your mind how attachment and desire arise, how ignorance arises, where emotions come from. Just that gives so much happiness and peace. So I hope you experience that or come to experience it in your practice. Happiness and peace that comes from just noticing. All of our experience is interesting. It all has something to offer. On a retreat, I once heard a teacher answer a question by replying, "The answer to every Dharma question is to get back on the cushion." In other words, keep training your mind to be present, to be mindful of whatever is arising in the moment. The more time that you devote to practicing being mindful, the greater the benefit. You already have everything you need to wake up. The answer lies within. The Buddha says, "It is just within this fathom-long body, with its perception and intellect, that I declare that there is a world, the origin of the world, the cessation of the world, and the path of practice leading to cessation." Or, as Tsongkhapa, Tibetan teacher, put it, "The human body at peace with itself is more precious than the rarest gem. Cherish your body. It is yours this one time only. The human form is one with great difficulty. It is easy to lose. All worldly things are brief, like lightning in the sky. This life you must know as the tiny splash of a raindrop, a thing of beauty that disappears even as it comes into being. Therefore, set your goal. Make use of every day and night to achieve it." So that's my offering on the 3 types of wisdom, and there's probably more than 3. Those are the 3 that I notice every week in Sangha. And we've done the first type in our meditation. We've now completed the second offering of wisdom in the Dharma talk, and the third offering of wisdom, exploration of wisdom, comes in reflection and questions and answers. So I'd love to hear from any of you. You have a question about the talk or something that came up, you want to mention something that came up in your meditation, or if anybody is willing to fess up to talk about their favorite, whether they like the meditation or the talk or the discussion better, and why that is, I'd be very interested in hearing about it. And I can't see everybody's faces on my screen, so Howie, I might need your help, and if somebody puts your hand up, and I don't see it. And if your hand is up and I'm missing it, just speak out. We'll sort it out.
I will let you know, David.
Thank you, Howie. Any thoughts or reflections? Sometimes the wisdom of the Sangha is the best part. Victor, I see a raised hand, please.
Hi, everyone. Well, it's interesting. I think this week, one of the messages I hear is the same one I heard with different words from 2 weeks ago. And by listening to the same message, it makes me think of how important it is. And that message is just letting go. I think Howie 2 weeks ago, he phrased it like that. He said one of his favorite authors, he said, if I could teach the Sangha one thing, it would be to let go. And today you mentioned that as well. And I'm mentioning it not not by any means as a form of criticism, but just the opposite. Like if the same message is being repeated, is because it's important. So that's how I take it. And also last week, I think we had, for lack of a better word, the opportunity to hear from two members about their mom's passing, and and I think that particular night I had, unbeknown to me, I had the preconceived idea, like I wanted to hear more uh, Buddhist terms that night. But when the meditation ended, I just thought like how lucky we are from gaining wisdom through the other members' experiences in life, and I was just feeling very grateful about it after the meditation ended, and I thought, so how lucky I am that I can learn through, with all due respect, through other people's experiences and sometimes suffering. And thank you. That's all.
Thank you for that, Victor. It's well said. And yes, we do repeat ourselves. And yes, that the themes like letting go come up over and over again. Howie once said to me, I don't know if he said this in Sangha or if he said it to me personally somewhere along the way, but when I first started teaching Howie, I think I said once, I don't know what to talk about tonight. And Howie said, oh, all Dharma talks are the Four Noble Truths. It's all the same Dharma talk. It's just a different facet of the crystal. And yeah, letting go is something that's fairly unique, I think, to Buddhism and Buddhist practice. And as I said, we Westerners are all about getting and achieving and doing and making things happen. And the Buddha was all about taking a step back and letting go. So that's the reason we keep coming back to that and repeating it. I certainly, after 50 years of practice, still need a reminder to let go sometimes. I still love to listen to instructions. I don't know about you. Sometimes meditation instructions annoy people, but I always appreciate them. I think, oh, right, yeah, let go. That's what I'm here to do. Let go, relax. So thank you, Victor. And Mary Gold, please.
I couldn't find the hand. It's in a different place tonight, but I'm glad I found it. I just wanted to thank you. I thought it was a very lovely talk you gave. Really, it was very beautifully said. Thank you very much. And
Oh, please
I,
go ahead.
well, no, I was just curious though. It was 2 minutes late, and I was just wondering because it did say how he was going to be here. Is he okay? I just thought I.
Yeah, he's fine. He's actually on the road. I think he's teaching someplace.
Oh,
I think, if I'm not mistaken, I'm a little foggy on because I talked to him a month ago. I think he might be gone next week as well. But it just didn't get communicated to everybody in the network, so it didn't get put into the announcement.
Yeah. My apologies for that. And yes, you're right, David. He will not be here next week.
well, I'm just glad he's okay and all is well.
Yeah, all is well. And
all right.
this has not been a coup. I have not taken over this podcast.
No, I didn't
Howie is
think
not
that.
trapped in the Dharma Palace.
No, I was just concerned. Well, thank you, David and Mary.
Thank you, Mary. Anybody else? I'm going to, if there's not another hand, I'm going to interject, and because I gave this talk at another Sangha a few days ago on Sunday. I gave a version of this talk. And somebody asked a really good question, and I just thought it was a terrific question. And they said, how do you differentiate between thoughts arising in the present moment and having thoughts being just like a sense drawer, sounds meeting the ear, thoughts meeting the mind? That's something that happens in the present moment. What's the difference between that and getting lost in a thought that's about the past or the future? I thought that was a really interesting question, because that's what happens. As a thought arises, happens in the present moment, is just a phenomena, comes and goes. But if we latch onto it, most thoughts will take us either into the past or the future. If you notice the nature of most of your thinking, it's usually not about the present moment. It's usually about the past or the future. So the answer, I think, my best answer for that question is that when you get attached, when you attach to a thought and follow it or feed it or encourage it, that's when you get lost. That's when it carries you into the past or the future. So yes, thoughts naturally arising in meditation are just phenomena happening in the present moment, nothing to worry about. They only become a problem when you become attached, when you get attached to them. So that's something you can notice in your meditation, is noticing kind of harmlessness of thoughts coming and going, and then noticing sometimes retroactively that you've gotten attached, that all of a sudden you're lost in some marvelous story or disturbing story. How did that happen? That's what the mind does, quite naturally. But understanding that allows us to let go a bit. Say, oh, I'm really getting caught up in something here. I don't have to do that. I can let go, or not get attached in the first place. So it's all about attachment, which of course is the second noble truth: craving and attachment. Anybody else? Reflections? Thoughts? Questions? Mission Dharma is a very quiet Sangha tonight. I like to think that that's indicative of a lot of peace of mind happening in this Zoom room. Lisa, please. I think you're muted, Lisa.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Yeah, not just a response to what you just said. Sometimes getting lost, noticing when you're getting lost in thought. Sometimes when I'm working, it's almost like I go into a dream sometimes, and I get very lost in the work I'm doing. And then, I look up and it's like 2 hours later or something. And I guess when you were mentioning what you were just talking about, I was like, like, is that bad? Like, I'm thinking when I'm working, in a sense, I'm sort of getting lost in something. I don't know. I don't know what my question is, but it's sort of a similar experience of being lost in a dream, uh, in a sense, but I guess a pleasant experience.
Yeah, well, that could be a number of things. That could be if you're kind of woozy and spacing out. That's one thing. But the other thing that happens is when we work or we're doing on a project or if we're making music or something, we get concentrated and we become very concentrated on what we're doing, and that allows us to do whatever we're doing very well. So you're concentrated, you're in the moment. That's skillful. But at the same time, you might not be aware because you're so concentrated. You might not be aware of other things going on. You might kind of forget that you're in a body, or you might, not notice other phenomena in the room.
Mhm.
So it's not necessarily a bad thing. That's just the nature of being concentrated. And I agree with you. It's kind of a good feeling to be that concentrated on something. That's what, and that's related to mindfulness practice and meditation. That's why a lot of elite athletes practice meditation nowadays, is because it allows them to completely focus on whatever they're doing, just in the present moment. And that's what's most important to them, is not necessarily to be mindful, but to, be the best runner or the best pole vaulter or the best ice skater. So it can be spaciness, that what you're describing. It can be concentration. It's useful, I find, and it's kind of a relief, like at work when you're concentrating on something for several hours. It's kind of nice to take a break every once in a while and just check in on the body, like, oh, just take a deep breath, or just notice how if you need to adjust your posture, or stand up for a moment, or relax for a moment. Maybe the body, needs a little attention in the middle of all that concentration. But it's not such a bad thing. Concentration's is part of the Eightfold Path too. So, and you can apply that concentration that you're describing to your meditation. So it's all good.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Good point. Daryl Christian, please. Hi.
Hi, thank you for your talk tonight. I have a question, and I'm a psychologist, and so as I've been studying the Dharma, one of the things I notice is that certainly in my work, there's a lot about emotion, right? I do couples work, and so there's a lot of emotion kinds of things. It seems like in the Eightfold Path, a lot of things apply to emotion, but emotion really isn't talked about directly. It's sort of attachment, I suppose, which has an underlying element of emotion connected to it. But it's interesting that I hear so little about emotion. And like even when thoughts go to the past or they go to the future, they probably go to something emotionally attractive or scary or whatever. But I'm just wondering what your thoughts are about how emotion is or isn't sort of included in the approach.
It's definitely included. Emotion is definitely there. And the Buddha talks about it in the Satipatthana Sutta, which is his kind of the primary sutta that teaches about meditation objects. And emotion is a meditation object, something you should pay attention to. But what the Buddha puts it in the same category as in the category of mind states. And the interesting thing about emotion, as a psychologist, I'm sure you're well aware of the fact that sometimes it's hard to parse out whether our thinking or reactivity to the world has caused the emotion, or whether the emotion is causing us to thinking about something and being reactive. It's hard to know which is the horse and which is the cart. So those two things are very closely related, thinking and emotion. Sometimes thinking impacts emotion, sometimes emotion impacts thinking. But in Buddhist psychology, and I'm not an expert, I'm not a psychologist, but I'm very interested in Buddhist psychology. The one thing that is a little bit different than the emphasis that's a little bit different than we do in Western therapy is this is just my opinion, we're not as interested in the content of thinking and emotion. We're more interested in the fact that thinking's happening, or the fact that emotion's present. So without necessarily labeling it or looking for the reason or the background or the deep-rooted conditioning of some emotion. We just notice first and foremost that it's happening, that it's a phenomenon. Like, oh, okay, I'm angry right now, and anger's like this, and we explore the nature of anger rather than what we're angry about. And I find that kind of interesting. It's just a different approach, is to look at anger as anger, or love as love, or worry as worry, and explore the nature of the emotion rather than the content. So in a nutshell, that's my very inexpert understanding of Buddhist psychology.
Thank you. Yeah, because it's taught. There's a lot of talk about thought, right? And what are the thoughts doing?
Yeah.
So I always wonder, like, well, there aren't any Dharma talks on, or at least I haven't heard any, like, on emotions being kind of the focus, and that interaction with the thoughts.
Yeah, no, we recognize emotions. Emotions are, yeah, pretty hard to avoid.
Thank
But
you.
thanks for the question. It's a good one. Mary Gold, please.
Hi, I do have a question, and that was an interesting question you just answered. But I do Howie usually every week, and I have a couple of meditation groups here locally. And one does a completely guided meditation. I happen to love the people in it and have a deep connection in a different way with it. And they have wonderful talks, and it's very nice. But I guess, I for many years did Zen meditation, so I come from a different type of a background. And I find it very difficult to do a guided meditation for the whole time. It kind of, I do it and it's very nice, but to me, it feels like somebody's reading me a story or something. It's soothing, but it's not the same for me as when I meditate silently. And I like to hear what somebody else has to say. It's hard for me. Like sometimes I want to say, okay, can we be quiet now so I can meditate? And I don't know, but I love the group too, so it's still part of my repertoire. But I'd like to hear your thoughts on it.
Well, I'm kind of with you, Mary. I share your preference. That said, it's different for everybody.
Right.
And I could give the same instructions like I gave tonight, and somebody in the song is going to think he was just talking too much, and somebody else is going to say, I just wish he'd kept going. It would have been helpful. So it's a matter of preference. Some people like a lot of instructions, some people like no instruction at all. I actually occasionally teach at a sangha where they don't do any instruction, and I always kind of wonder about if somebody's sitting out there feeling lost and they don't know what to be doing with their mind. So yeah, that's a bit of a quandary.
Well, I like a little bit to lead into it. It kind of sets the mood, and I certainly like a talk. But I maybe I'm just used to a more silent meditation for the majority of the meditation part, and when there's no quiet time at all, when it's constant uh, you know talking, I find that very challenging for me. It's not I feel like I don't meditate in the same way that I prefer. Let's
Yeah.
put it that way.
Thank you, Mary.
Well, thank you for answering that question. I thought about it a
And
lot.
we need a few minutes for announcements now. We're kind of coming at the end of our session, and I think Howie's got a couple of announcements, maybe.
Yeah, yes. I want to just talk about two things. One, here's another Pali word that you folks probably have heard in the past. It's Dana. And I love to remind everybody each time I can about Dana, about how the term means generosity, and it's the way of showing one's gratitude for the Dharma, the Sangha, and in this special case, the teacher too. David is so kind to offer his time and his wisdom to us, and we certainly very, I certainly really enjoyed it and benefit from it. And we could all, as a Sangha, show our appreciation. One way to do it, the best way to do it, is to send some money. And I have put the information in the chat about how to send Donna to Mission Dharma. It's a way to continue our Sangha. The other thing I want to mention is the fact that there are still openings for the retreat that's happening in the end of July 29th through the 4th, that Howard's going to be one of the teachers. It's a in-person, on-site at Spirit Rock. And I have put information about registering for that in the chat. Also look on the email that you got. So that's it. And back to you, David.
Okay, well, we're right at 8:30, so timed well, and let's just take a very quick moment to offer the merit of our practice, recognizing that just as we wish for peace of mind and happiness for ourselves, that's something we wish for all beings, not just the people that are closest to us, our friends and our family and our neighbors, but all beings everywhere. In the city you live in, the country you live in, other countries and places of the world that are in turmoil. May all beings everywhere feel safe and protected. May they be healthy in body and mind. May they live with peace and ease. May all beings everywhere be free of suffering. Thank you, everybody, and good night.
Thank you, David.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, David. Good night.
Good night. Thank you, David, so much. Good night.
Everybody.
Everybody. Good night. Thank
Good
you. Good
night.
night.
Good night,
Thank
everyone.